2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Meine Aufgabe jetzt an dieser Stelle
My task at this point is to explain to you why IBKA, the International League of the Confession of the Non-Religious and Atheists, a very complex word, awards Graffin with the Sapio. The name of IBKA contains the term atheist, but it's not an atheist association in the sense that it strives for the dissemination of atheism. Assunta already mentioned the goal, and this is why we also award the prize or the award. Let me summarize it again. So its goals are the freedom of cosmovision, individual self-determination, rational thinking, and information education on the role of religion. These are the core values of our association. So why do we award Graffin with this award, with the Sapio? Because the work of Graffin combines in an unusual way artistic and scientific commitment. His activity as a university lecturer is less known. He's a lecturer for evolutionary biology. Evolutionary biology is the key to the understanding of the origin of man. The modern natural sciences provide man with a view and with things that are way more fascinating than everything that religious thinkers came up with. And apart from that, the knowledge of science is way more useful than everything that religion could offer. And evolutionary biology is much more than the criticism of religion that took away the foundation of the dogmatic monotheism. And it did not do so by proving the non-existence of God, but by showing that God in a modern world doesn't have any function anymore. But without criticism of religion or protest against the pretension of the dogmatic religion, things do not work either. In his role as a lead singer of the punk band Bad Religion. And a lot of people believe that religious criticism that is too insulting, we should do without that. But I believe that we cannot do without criticism of religion. If we criticize a system that, if you take a closer look, becomes absurd, then it is obvious that you have to depict or illustrate this kind of absurdity. So in his role as a lead singer of the punk band Bad Religion, with this kind of interpretation of punk, Graffin stands for the freedom of the individual, for and also for the dispute with the so-called authorities. And punk is connected to protest, but it's not empty protest, not protest without a positive goal, but a protest that strives for individual freedom. And the punk rock singer Graffin cannot be separated from the evolutionary biologist Graffin, and he explained that to us very well. So individuality for him is not founded on metaphysics, but it comes from his uniqueness that derives from his unique genetics. So evolutionary biology founds the individuality of man, far from turning man into a slave of his genes. Among people who call themselves left-wings or progressive, you oftentimes find a rare reserve or a peculiar reserve to regard or to consider man as a biological creature. In social sciences, you find a tradition to consider man only in his relationship with society and to exclude the underlying layer of biology. So people try to avoid to refer to evolution and sometimes even think it would be suspicious. This has to do with the abuse of evolutionary biology that had horrible consequences, especially in Germany. Some of you know the dictum of Marx that natural sciences did only describe the world, but that everything is about changing the world. So oftentimes the science sciences of the mind believe they are superior to the natural sciences. And obviously, we need to consider that from being does not derive an imperative. So scientists cannot prescribe imperatives. But in order to know where I want to go, I need to know where I am. And in order to understand where I am, I need to take a look at my past. And so man needs to know something about evolution, because otherwise they cannot move ahead. And Graffin shows us, not only in his theoretical explanations, but also with his work, that evolution and an emancipatory conception of the human being do not exclude each other. And all of this makes him a worthy winner of this award. And I'm very happy to have you here with us today, and I'm delighted to be able to convey you the award. Please come up on stage.
So, maybe you want to tell us a few words.
Danke. Interpreter for all of that. Nice job. So I could follow a lot of that. Thank you. I could not have written a better introduction to myself than we already heard, so thank you so much. I think, first of all, I want to thank everybody for inviting me here. This was a special honor. I don't know why I became a sort of poster boy for this, but as was explained, I do appreciate the recognition of the fact that I'm not schizophrenic. I'm not two bodies or two minds living in one body. I really tried for many years to integrate arts and sciences. When I went to college, I was applying to a university that was under this big banner. In the American universities, they lump the two, arts and sciences, together. And I didn't understand. I wanted to study science, but I also loved art. And so I always thought in my youth that they were two separate things. But at the university, I really started to see the integration of the two. And by that time, Bad Religion had already released 2 or 3 albums. We started when I was in high school. And I was 15 years old. And I knew that I wanted to play punk music. But I also knew that I wanted the songs to sound philosophical. And I wanted it to be something that could raise awareness. And that's nothing that any other punk band was doing at the time. But I was really inspired by so many punk bands that had really aggressive political songs. And politics was something, I really wasn't interested in political science. And a lot of the English bands, for instance, the early English punk bands were singing about working class conditions in England. I was a kid growing up in the suburbs of Los Angeles. What do I know about? I don't even care about what's going on in England at that time. So that was all politics, but philosophy was something that was really, I was passionate about philosophy, and I don't know why. But as I got older, I started to understand why. I think it was because the people who should really be receiving this Sapio Award, my parents had the good sense to raise myself and my brother without any stories of the Bible. Even though my mother was raised in a very strict Protestant religion, my mother is an absolute scholar on the Bible. You can ask her anything. And that's because she was made to memorize the Bible, essentially, when she was a little girl in the 1930s and 40s. But I think by the 1960s, when I was born, she had had enough of it. And she said, I'm not raising my kids that way. And so my brother and I grew up in the absolute absence of any religious narrative. So there was no story of understanding how special I could be. I didn't think I was special. I was just a kid growing up in the suburbs. There was no story of how I was created in the mind of a creator or placed here for a special purpose. There was none of this. I was just a kid who really was a sponge, absorbing the different stimuli of my cultural surroundings. And because of that, I think as I went to university, as I got older, there was a yearning and a wish for understanding. Where did I come from? Why was I put here? Other people I know who were raised under a religious family didn't have those same questions. They were told why they are here. They were told their purpose. And because of this, they didn't have the same striving to understand origins that I had. Well, it should come as no surprise then, where did I find the narrative of origins? From evolution. So I was immediately drawn into the science aspect of the letters in science when I went to college, and I immediately was drawn to take all the classes in evolution because evolution provided a narrative of origins that was very satisfying to me. It allowed me to see myself as part of a population, myself as part of a species, and that species had an origin in another species. And that gave me a connection to the natural world, which to this day I still cherish. So I felt like there was some reason, at least I could understand my connection with other beings and other organisms. And I think that gave me a very satisfying narrative that I went on to write about in a book called Anarchy Evolution, and then another one I'm expanding on coming out in September called Population Wars. So, and I just, I think that's sort of a brief introduction that's not quite as erudite as we heard earlier. I think yours was very analytical, and I appreciate that because it's far more intellectual than I could have thrown together here. But I think part of the spirit of not only IBKA, if I may speak on behalf of IBKA, but also I can speak on behalf of another group. I won an award from the American Humanist Association that was a similar award. And I see a great community here. And it's this community that I feel very happy to be a part of. And I feel very welcome here, and I do appreciate that greatly. Because a community is based not on labels, but on a common way of thinking. And I think there's room for tolerance, there's room for understanding, not only in this room, but for all the members of humanist societies around the country and around the globe. And because of that, I wanted to come here and be present today. But I also, if it's okay with you, would like to open it up for any questions, because part of a community is getting to know each other, and that takes a little bit of dialogue. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And if not, I can always take my Sapio and go home.
Hi. Here. Here. Down here. Down here. Down here.
God, is that you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, it is me.
Hello.
My question is, how did you manage time-wise to have a music career and a science career?
Do you see these gray hairs?
So you're actually only 25?
I'm only 28 years old. No. I don't sleep as much as most people. That is true. I wish I slept better, but first of all, it's been, Bad Religion's been around for 35 years. That's a long time. for any band. And what keeps us together is commitment. But it's really an intellectual pursuit. I know it sounds crazy, but the band started out as a group of kids together with a common goal of trying to write the best punk songs. And today we're men who are still maybe childishly believing that we still can write a better punk song. So we're still continuing in this tradition that we started many years ago. But the whole time I never believed that it would become a career. I thought it was a gift. I thought it was being able to play music in front of people is really a gift. You know, it's not something you earn. It's something you are given. It's a privilege. And so I always believed in that privilege, but it could be taken away at any time. And I didn't want that to happen and for me to fall back on nothing. So I really pursued academia because I thought it was a way to fall back if music didn't work out. And it turned out that my academic pursuits, I started trying just as hard as I tried to write good music. I tried to learn more. And I really believe that if you do things out of love, it doesn't feel like a long time. It feels like just your life. And that's why I pursue them both with equal energy and excitement. And where does it leave room for other things? Well, I bring my family along, and they seem to tell me when it's too much. And sometimes I have to put music and academics on the shelf for a while. But it's always there for me when I need it.
Hi there. First thing, please don't diss people that come from working class areas of England.
I don't diss you. Now we play their concerts all the time. But as a teenager, I didn't understand any of it. So I can tell from your accent that you're from Birmingham.
No, I'm a Londoner.
Sorry.
Never mind.
That's one of those risks you take, you know. You try to nail it and then you blow it, and so. But Londoner would be. Thank you for not punching me in the nose.
That's fine. That's fine. In your role as an evolutionary biologist, have you encountered, should we say, those within American society who are not as accepting of your field of study, and how do you go about dealing with them when you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in music. It's the same thing in academia. If you aren't overcommitted to one thing, you're going to get criticized. I've seen it multi-generational. My father was a professor. He just retired recently, actually. But you know, he was a great professor of English, so he was a department chair, and he sure relished his summers, though. You know, the summer vacation was everything to him, and that's when we had the most fun together too. But he always encouraged us to do many things, and yet a lot of academic colleagues don't. I think I have pretty low status. I think it's safe to say at the university, my status is not really high. I'm a lecturer, and the professors are quick to remind me of that. It doesn't bother me. I accept that role. And, you know, I think if I was really, this goes back to your question a little too about how can you do both? Well, I think you have to make compromises. You know, there was never a time when I was going to become a tenure track professor. That would require total commitment to the university. I couldn't do it. So I accept my compromised position as a lecturer with no status in the department. My colleagues in the department are all very welcoming, and I really appreciate that. But I'm not going to ever make the kind of money that a full professor makes. And that's okay by me, because I have a punk rock band that's world famous. And so, but also, I will say this, in music, we could be a lot more famous, And that's true. My guys in the band have put up with a lot of crap. Like me saying, guys, I have to lecture. I can't go play in Barcelona this weekend. And they're going, are you kidding me? You're going to give a lecture to 150 students instead of go play at an arena in Barcelona? And I have to say, sorry, I'll make it up to you somehow. So we've made compromises in the musical world just because of this balancing act that I have. And a lot of our peers in the music community think that, I'm a dilettante, they think he's not a serious enough musician. And I think that has hindered our ability to become a more commercial band, perhaps. But I think in this respect, the balance is way more valuable to me. I think it's more valuable to our brand image as a punk band. Don't let any punkers hear you say that, but I think it's helped our band in terms of our status as well. So that's a long-winded way of saying that if you don't commit to something full-time, 100%, and that's getting to the question of academia, how do they view me? I think they don't take it very seriously. And now I've written trade books. And writing trade books in academia is also, unless you're Richard Dawkins or someone who's already got a very firm foundation as an academic first, or E.O. Wilson, or Stephen Jay Gould, or any number of writers who were academics first and then wrote trade books. I'm doing it the other way around. And I expect all the criticism I'm going to get. It'll be heavy, but I can handle it. Good question. Thanks.
Richard Dawkins told me that you helped him to find the title, The God Delusion. Maybe you can tell this story too.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I always wondered if I really helped him or not. But it's nice to hear that. So thank you. Well, I remember he invited me to his house when I was a graduate student, and we were talking about religion and evolution, and he had said something to me about the illusion of free will is so powerful, we might as well have it. And I thought about it for a while, and I said, an illusion is something that's temporary, because I used to love magic. Okay, true story. Before Bad Religion, I wanted to be a magician, and I'm still pretty good at it, but it's too much pressure. If you think lecturing is high pressure, you should try close illusion magic. It's not easy. But illusion was temporary, so I said, isn't it more powerful? Isn't it more of a delusion? And next thing I knew, he had published his God Delusion book. So if that's true that he told you this, I really thank him for that, because it would have been nice if he told me, but... but thank you.
Just a quick comment
Okay.
that what you said about magic.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old, who's a self-proclaimed atheist, by the way, has told me she wants to do magic. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she's like, I want to do magic. And she's like, how do I do that? And I was like, science.
Yeah, that's a good introduction to it. But that's about the age that you should bring her to Las Vegas. Sure, one of the great magicians in Las Vegas, and she will be hooked forever.
Thank you.
In front.
Hello, my name is Maximilian Steinhaus. I have a question. You talked about the secular movement or the secular community, and I just asked me in that moment, how's the secular community working in America? Here in Germany we have, for example, regional groups and groups at university who come together, discuss, and they try to inform other students about science and philosophy and why a secular world would be a better world. And I just asked me, are such groups at American universities as well? And for example, Do they protest when there are some creationists at university, something like this?
Okay, good question. As far as I can see, I mean, you could measure the success of the secular community by how big these conventions are. But I don't think that's a true measure of the secularization of the society. And I'm not sure what the best measure of it is. But all I could answer in your, when you say how are things going in the secular world, I don't go to secular gatherings except when I'm invited. And that's not because I don't want to be a part of it, but as we've already pointed out, my time's really limited, and I have a family also that I care about, and we live in a secular society because we don't go to church, but the people we interact with and the endless list of activities that we do are all secular activities. So in one way I can answer it just from personal experience that secular life in America is pretty rich. It's pretty easy to be a secularist in America. You have a comment on that? Okay, 1 minute. I think what you're getting at though is, are there some movements that are trying to enlist people to become more secular? And I think those have their place, perhaps, but I don't participate in them, except in the sense that I write music about it. I play concerts, and I know for a fact that a lot of if you look at a Bad Religion concert, it's not all punk rockers. It's a very interesting mix of people, multi-generational, and a lot of them come from religious backgrounds. We have a large following of religious people who follow Bad Religion, and I think that's because we are not combative to religious people. In fact, I think the way to educate anyone is to not be combative, not to put them down, but to offer them a different view. So if that's what you're saying, there are some groups that are going out and trying to educate people, I think that's a good thing. In front there?
To my surprise,
He's next.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
That's okay.
To my surprise, I read a couple of weeks ago in the newspaper that the percentage of believing people in the States is reducing. I was very surprised. I loved the idea, but I had no idea why it's going like that. Do you have some idea, some hypothesis about that?
First of all, I'm very skeptical of those reports. I think you can find data that show there's certain polls that were taken, but I think they just go back and forth, depending on the whims of the newspaper editors. Where I can see it, I look at the larger picture and I try to see what are some of the trends. And obviously some of the trends are that churches are closing. I know that, I can tell you this. In our hometown in upstate New York, there's a town that is selling the local church because they can't run the church anymore. This is happening in small towns, mostly because small towns, people are abandoning them. The populations are moving to the cities, and they're living a more urban existence. Well, what does an urban existence bring with it? A secular lifestyle. More things to do that aren't related to the church. So I think, those kinds of socioeconomic patterns are real. But in terms of what people actually think in America, I think you have to judge it by socioeconomics and patterns of migration and all that stuff. And I think those polls are based on statistics that might change back the other way if you ask in 2 more years or something. They're very trendy. So I would stick with my personal example and realize that in Deutschland, for instance, it's smaller towns. Maybe they are changing a little bit in their population structure, but the churches remain as cultural symbols or antique monuments or the most beautiful part of the Altstadt. And because of that, they will always be there.
May I?
Yeah.
I think I have to contradict you.
Okay.
When I'm on a Bad Religion concert, I don't see many generations. I only see, well, I feel old on a Bad Religion concert.
You are old. So.
Thank you. No, the thing is, I mean...
But I'm older, so how do you think I feel?
And that leads to my question.
Yeah.
Are you planning to ever stop making music? Please say no.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not, there's no termination date. There's no like, I mean, I always said when Mick Jagger retires, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years I've been saying that, you know. So, no, I don't know. It's music is a part of life. So, yeah, I'll probably stop when I'm dead.
So it doesn't feel strange standing on stage, looking at 16-year-olds?
I don't look at the 16-year-olds.
Okay.
I also think, though, that it brings up an interesting thing. It's no different than me lecturing to 18-year-old undergraduates. I feel the same. When I'm on a podium giving a lecture, it's an audience of young people who want some provocation or something, you know, to really grab onto intellectually. I think of the audience at a Bad Religion concert the same way. And I think that's what keeps us from trying to pander to the young audience. So many bands, as they get old, they try to stay young. And you can't do that. You have to be yourself. And you have to accept a role. In my case, it's the role of the voice, you know, and transmitting ideas. And that doesn't feel awkward to me. So.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I'm from the Secular Greens activist group in the Green Party here in Germany. I read your punk manifesto and I just loved it. I actually never came on the idea to combining my secular activities with punk in that way before I read your manifesto. And then I was thinking about, there's also this mayor of Reykjavik, a punk rocker that became mayor of Reykjavik. And I remember posting on Facebook some couple of months ago, like there needs to be more punk in politics too. So right now things are coming together. I would like to ask you, even though you said you're not like that into politics, but maybe you have some perspectives too, how would you say, can you like survive as a humanist, a punker, anarchist in politics and bring that momentum and attitude forwards change and movement also in the political system?
Well, I don't think there's an easy formula to that. I mean, that sounds like a complicated mix of intellectual pursuits. But I think, you know, I mean, certainly I live in a political world, and so I have to be aware of politics. But I just don't know how you can change politics. That's what I meant when I said I don't really think that being a political voice is my strong suit. I have a strong connection to nature, for instance. I study it. I love being in nature. And so you say you're part of the Green Party. Most of the issues that you deal with in the Green Party are things I'm very passionate about, things that I have experience with, and things I have opinions on. Oftentimes I'll include those in my songs. For instance, a song like Kyoto Now was written for the Kyoto Protocol, and it's become a popular Bad Religion song. But in my lectures, I have to tone down my political views, because my goal is not to make people angry about something, it's to make them question their own beliefs about something. So in evolution, we can talk about genetic modification of food, for instance, but not whether it's good or bad, but the techniques involved in changing species in a short number of generations, as opposed to how nature does it over thousands of generations. And this is what gets people thinking. Then they can come to their own political conclusions at a university. So how do I change it? I'm not sure the answer to that, but I do know that there are different things that I do that are appropriate to music and other ones that are appropriate to academic pursuits. And it's up to people like you who are activists or in the Green Party itself to come up with an agenda. And hopefully you'll consult some scientists to see if your agenda is sound.
Sorry.
Okay.
I keep forgetting to introduce myself when I answer questions. I'm Morgan from New York by way of Istanbul.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, you too. So I have a question and a comment. First, the comments about what Max was asking you. I had the opportunity to attend Secular Coalition for America's Secular Summit last month. And they talked about, there was a gentleman there that presented statistics that have not been published yet from this religious research institute that they've polled throughout the United States religious beliefs and secularism and all of these different types of issues in that area. And they've come up with actual percentages of how the religion has declined and in which parts of the society it's declined. And basically the summary is that a lot of the conservative religious Christians in the United States are very old and dying. Mm-hmm. And young people either don't care about it or don't think the government should be involved in it. Mm-hmm. So I think it is changing, but I think what you said is definitely very relevant, that in 2 years, it can be totally different, because if something like 9/11, for example, was to happen again, it might increase religious numbers significantly.
That's a good point. And I understand, I've heard similar, like I said, I've read the newspapers, I've seen similar reports. Maybe we're talking about the same exact report. What struck me about that is they're just saying young people are more open-minded, and young people don't like to get indoctrinated. We all know this already. That's not, to me, addressing the issue, the larger issue of, is it becoming more secular or not? Our country is crazy. I mean, as soon as we elect some right-wing president, all of a sudden everyone jumps on the bandwagon for right-wing causes. That's just the way it's always been. We're very fickle, and I don't understand why we elect right-wing people, but we do, and it happens all the time. And those polls start to show different trends, or perhaps the reporting starts to be reported along different lines of trendy politics. So it's very hard to get good data on this kind of thing. But certainly you're right, the older generation, although, you know, my parents are older generation, and they were liberals. So, you know, America is a very complicated place.
I mean, absolutely. My grandmother's Presbyterian and doesn't understand why I'm atheist, even though she doesn't disown me for it. But she believes in legalization of marijuana. She tells me all the time, in Germany, prostitution is legal, and it's so much better. They should just do it in America. And she's 86 years old. Yeah. So, yeah, but she goes to church every Sunday. So
in America, you can pretty much believe what you want.
But my question is, have you ever played a concert in Istanbul?
We've never had an offer from Turkey, so.
Wow.
Unfortunately, that's usually how it happens, is the reason we haven't visited somewhere is because we haven't received an offer. And there aren't a lot of promoters that I know of in Istanbul. So I guess this is the first time it's been brought up in a public place. So.
Well, let's talk then.
All right. So I think I appreciate being here, and thanks for all the questions. And now I get to hold on to my great trophy. You like it? Beautiful. Thank you.